Budda Baker's back. Paris Johnson Jr. and others shine. And Sean Payton runs his mouth, making me think the Cardinals dodged a bullet by not hiring Sean Payton.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please go to the YouTube channel. Search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit subscribe. Turn notifications on. Leave a comment. Leave a like. This episode of Locked On Cardinals, it's going to be a fun one. There's a lot to talk about. But thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There's a lot to discuss. It's kind of a grab bag here as we roll through training camp. Seen some clips out of camp. I mean, everything. I mean, looks good. It's an interesting time because you're seeing guys run routes and you're seeing passes completed and you're seeing defensive players making plays. It's like, that's great. Getting on the field, getting moving and shaking, and getting on their way. And it's the other side of it's just like, cool. We're getting closer. We're getting closer to games that matter. We're getting closer to trimming down the roster and who's going to be, integral parts of this team. Who's going to get them, more of the snap percentages, whatever it is. It's still early. So when you talk about things like Paris Johnson Jr., who I'm going to discuss in the second segment, you discuss things like Zaven Collins potentially moving positions, Isaiah Simmons potentially moving positions. Those are intriguing storylines that we're going to see unfold throughout this offseason. It's still very early, being just a couple days into camp. One story, though, that I can finally put to rest is Budda Baker got paid. Was it as much as maybe he wanted initially? No. What was it? What I thought the Cardinals should do? No, not necessarily. But what they did serves a very, very important purpose. It allows everybody involved to table the conversation until the end of the 2023 season. So Budda Baker got his entire 2023 contract year guaranteed, okay, which is what he wants. There are escalators, there are game bonuses, there are plenty of ways for him to make more money in 2023 than just the $13 million. And it allows Monty Ossenfort, Michael Bidwell, etc., to not have to tie themselves to a player for longer than what they currently have him as, with this being a bridge year. So no guaranteed money in 2024. So this truly is a wait and see. You get a little extra juice for what's set to be potentially a not so great win-loss record for the Cardinals in 2023. And then we'll open up this discussion later. That's it. Budda's back. I don't see any reason why he's going to go anywhere else. I feel like this was just a tip of the hat to Budda Baker from Michael Bidwell and Monty Ossenfort saying, we appreciate you. We know how important you are to this team. And there are a lot of moving parts here still. And this is probably the best we can do until we figure out what the hell else is going on. And the only way you're going to find out is when Kyler Murray comes back, what the gameplay looks like, and what this team looks like, especially one that's infused with so much young talent that are going to be sprung into prominent roles in important positions pretty much starting in week one. They got their leader back. They got their defensive leader back. They got their clubhouse leader back. And that's the most important thing for the Arizona Cardinals this entire offseason, save knocking it out of the park with the draft. That was one of the major issues the last regime could not figure out. How to take care of their own in a way that didn't give away, future salary cap room that needed to be allocated elsewhere. Didn't need to give him the house just to make him happy. Budda Baker got what he wanted, mostly. The Cardinals didn't have to give up a whole lot more. And now they can just focus on camp. And Budda Baker will be a non-story, hopefully, except for positive ways on the field, as a leader, off the field as a leader, taking this young defensive core and guiding them to a potential trajectory-changing season, just, gauged in a different way. That's one of the main things I'm going to be talking about this entire season. These aren't moral victories. These aren't like, oh, you know what? It's a bad team, but these things went well. So let's give them the green ribbon, the 14th place ribbon at the county fair. That's not what these little wins are going to be. This is a complete overhaul, rebranding of a perennially losing organization, and they just retained their most important player, not named Kyler Murray. That's a big deal. And as we go through this year, there's going to be things that we're going to be discussing that are going to be positive, that have nothing to do with win-loss record. You just throw that out the window. They're going to lose a lot of games. They might win a couple, and that's fine. This is what a hard reset, rock bottom pivot looks like, and that's okay. So far, since they moved on from the last regime, they've done everything right. Michael Bidwell, Monty Osborne, they've done everything right. They've done everything right to position this team for future success. And checking the box with Budda Baker was a fantastic little cherry on top, I guess, for what's been a very, very efficient draft through yesterday when they gave him the extension. And as we go into camp, that's one less thing the Cardinals have to worry about. And the more boxes that can be checked in that light, the better off everybody's going to be as they try to transition out of a dysfunctional organization into one who functions at a higher level. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter. Man, I've got Broncos fans pissed off that I think the Cardinals dodged a bullet by not hiring Sean Payton. I'll talk about that in the final segment. Next, Paris Johnson Jr. He's already not talked about enough, as he should. He's shown off in camp a little bit. I will discuss that next as we roll on here. First, this episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny's picked out for us on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Pick of the Week. When the top tier of quarterbacks is off the board in the fantasy football draft in 2023, there's another line of luxury passers and runners who are guaranteed to fit your starting lineup every week. One of them is the Bears' Justin Fields, who started rolling out of the garage last season, and is bound to jump into the fast lane this season. This time, on top of his huge rushing total, Fields can deliver improved stats in the air with DJ Moore now leading Chicago's wide receiver core. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you with your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it. eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fix it up because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for that green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. I am Alex Clancy. I am your host. I am here. I'm here with you. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Everydayers, thanks for being around. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being here if you've been here since 2017 or if this is your first listen to Locked On Cardinals. Thank you. Paris Johnson Jr. will be thanked by Kyler Murray myriad times across their career together if what we've seen so far in camp is the trajectory for Paris Johnson Jr. in the future. There's a couple things that I've talked about as pertaining to rookies. So sometimes rookies take longer to develop, and then they become stars. Okay, happens. And then sometimes rookies look like seasoned vets immediately. And I'm thinking that Paris Johnson Jr. kind of is gearing towards looking like the latter. And while he may not play in his favorite position of left tackle this year because DJ Humphries is still around, you're going to get to see what it looks like to spend high-end draft capital on an offensive lineman. Something that hasn't happened since the aforementioned DJ Humphries was drafted in 2015. Steve Keim spent 7 drafts after that, not drafting an offensive lineman in the first round. So this is kind of uncharted waters for this generation of Cardinals fans. And there's been some clips out of camp, Paris Johnson Jr. and Zaven Collins going at it. Zaven Collins doesn't win a whole bunch of those battles. Paris Johnson Jr. is a large young man. He's tall, he's strong, he's thick, he's got a great base. Like, this is going to be something talked about for a very long time if he turns out to be an all-pro, guard and or tackle. Depending on if he plays on the right side with Kelvin Beacham's injury or the left side, the preferred side with DJ Humphries. Like, when I tease that he's not talked about enough, it's because we don't know how to talk about an offensive lineman getting drafted by the Cardinals and looking at him through camp. Haven't been able to look at that since 2015. Before I even took over this podcast, I was still in radio in Phoenix, but I've only been doing this podcast since 2017. So getting a firsthand look at a player who could be the protector for Kyler Murray for the next decade, you just check it off. It's pretty special. The Arizona Cardinals have very few set and forget players on this roster currently. And if Paris Johnson Jr. can come in from day one and just be one of those guys, be incredible. I mean, it'd just be massive. Be massive. And he was one of the guys that I was talking about during, rookie camp who had just a big smile on his face. He's kind of like DJ Humphries in that regard. He's got a great personality. He loves to be in Arizona so far. And the more players who love to be here just is incredible PR for free agents who see it. Like, I can't stress enough. And if you've been a fan of the Arizona Cardinals for a long time, you know this. Like, I worked in sports radio and stuff in Phoenix for the last 12 years or so. If that script can be flipped, where players want to come play here, it changes everything. And I know that, the Cardinals have an uphill battle, right? So when I talk about these things, it's like a lot of this stuff is future paced. A lot of this stuff is if this, then this. And if Paris Johnson Jr. becomes a difference maker immediately, then whoever is the quarterback for the Cardinals next year is going to be in an incredibly different spot than Kyler Murray was to start last year. The magnitude of drafting and hitting on an offensive lineman in the first round is unparalleled. And what we've seen so far from Paris Johnson, I know it's early, not crowning him yet. It hasn't been negative. And that's all you're looking for in camp. No pads, running routes. Great, cool. You guys are fast, got good hands, not dropping balls, whatever it may be. But if you can find a gem in the first round and it's an offensive lineman, it changes the trajectory of things. It just changes things. On top of that, Monty Ossenford nailing another first-round pick in 2024 in the process. It's just you can't ask for much more. You can't ask for much more. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Sean Payton. Ugh. I'll talk about it next. Final segment, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. So, I tweeted out the Arizona Cardinals dodged a bullet by not hiring Sean Payton. And I was in the camp very early on, if you've been listening this offseason, that there's no way the Cardinals should have traded, first-round pick or whatever the package was for Sean Payton. Because Sean Payton didn't win a Super Bowl. Absolutely. How long ago? The New Orleans Saints were perennial great regular season teams and then underachievers in the playoffs. Sean Payton was suspended for a year for Bountygate, which people just, don't really think about anymore. Great coach. Turned Drew Brees into what he was, for sure. Or at least put him in a position to do so, coming over from San Diego and choosing New Orleans over Miami. Or having Miami choose Dante Culpepper over him, landing him in New Orleans. Sean Payton, for those that missed it, just ripped Nathaniel Hackett and called it one of the worst head coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. He said, paraphrasing, whatever they did last year, we're going to do the opposite. This isn't Russell Wilson's fault. Russell Wilson just doesn't get bad over one season. So while all that is probably true, was it necessary? They know that. Nathaniel Hackett had a terrible year as head coach last year for the Cardinals, or for the Broncos. I'm just used to saying that about Cliff Kingsbury. Was it necessary just to dig at it? Run your own race. You just come in there and just, you're not an announcer anymore. You're not an analyst anymore. You're a head coach of a professional football team again. And you just throw shots? Now, while there's gamesmanship involved and while, not everybody takes the high road from a head coaching position, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It's like, what are we doing here? And then Jonathan Gannon's getting made fun of because he used weird hand movements 3 times. And he kind of made a couple dumb jokes. He showed personality. It's like, you have to be cool to be a head coach, or you just have to be good at your job. Just saw it as a head coach who hadn't won a whole lot in the last 10, 12 years, just punching down at a guy who, it was a failed experiment. Definitely. Nathaniel Hackett was not a good head coach. What does that do? So say you're Denver Broncos players, and you see him, it's like, that's funny. I mean, we experienced it, but is that the best look for a new coach coming in, making fun of the guy who didn't succeed? You know how many head coaches actually succeed in the NFL and don't get fired? The Saints were so bad before Sean Payton got there, he pretty much had a lifetime pass. So when I see that, the article's written, the audio, everything like that, I'm just like, that's just a bad look, man. Just a bad look. So when I say they dodged a bullet, it's kind of, multi-pronged. One, they didn't have to give him draft capital to get a head coach who hasn't really won anything in a long time. Coaches have been fired for less than what Sean Payton put up the last couple years. You can blame the refs, you can blame Kyle Rudolph, you can blame whatever you want in the respective years, whatever. The blown coverage with the Minneapolis Miracle, whatever it is. Oh, well, the team has bad luck, so it's not Sean Payton's fault. Whatever. He's a head coach. And he goes to the booth, says a lot of nice things about Kyler Murray, comes in for what seems to be 12 hours with Michael Bidwell. Maybe it was a leverage ploy, maybe it wasn't. I'm not saying that this is the misconception, because I get a lot of, Broncos fans are having a field day with this. Oh, well, look at who you hired. That's not what this is about. The Cardinals dodged a bullet. It has nothing to do with who they actually hired. I'm not saying that Jonathan Gannon was a better hire than what Sean Payton would have become. I'm saying that was a jerk. It's just, ugh. It's like a bully mentality. It's like, what could you gain from putting down someone in that way, like in a public forum? I just don't get it. It just feels off. Feels like somebody's trying to overcompensate. It's not a position of power. It's a position of weakness. Calling somebody out where everybody saw how discombobulated that season was. Losing Javonte Williams didn't help. But when I say the Cardinals dodged a bullet, it's like, you come in with this new regime, you don't want that to be the first thing that comes out of your head coach's mouth. At least not in my opinion. So the Cardinals 100% dodged a bullet. That is not saying that Jonathan Gannon was a better hire than Sean Payton would have been. But you don't want something like that spewing out of your new head coach's mouth as you're trying to change the functionality and culture in State Farm Stadium and beyond. It just doesn't sit right. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. I will talk to you on Monday.